We're live again from High G's. Welcome. First time that I've actually realised that there's a little banner at the top of the screen. It says it's showtime, as Jimmy Lennon Jr. would say. Not Michael Buffer. He would say, let's get ready to rumble, wouldn't he? I don't know if we're going to be rumbling tonight, though, because tonight's guest is probably one of the coolest guys that I've ever had the pleasure of meeting. I'm sorry for everybody else that's been on, but just wait until you hear what this chap has to say. I first met him, and I say meet because he's another in the list of people that I've not actually met face to face, just virtually, which is probably the same for a lot of us over the last sort of 16, 17, 18 months, right? But the first time that I had the privilege of listening to this evening's guest was by way of Mr. Paul Mort and one of his sort of sessions, quarterly sessions that was on, and I listened to a conversation between my guest tonight and Paul, and a lot of what he had to say resonated. Some of it blew my mind, to be quite honest, but all of it was fascinating. Roll the clock forward about another 6 months, and I had the privilege of doing an online live meditation with him. I'm going to bring him in. Tonight's guest is, so I'm going to let you tell you what he used to do. But what he does now is he teaches meditation. He's an author. He's written this book that I've read about half of now, and he has another book just released, which I'm hopefully going to get a little bit of an insight into tonight as well, a little bit more than I did last night. Please give a High G's welcome to the one and only Arjuna Ishaya. Welcome, Arjuna. Hello.
Hello. That's fantastic. Thank you.
Well, listen, all deserved. I need to give an introduction so people know who you are.
Yeah, thank you. No.
And I just, what I'd like to say, because sometimes I feel that tonight might be one of those evenings where I don't see the comments coming in, and sometimes we get some great questions. Sometimes the questions that the people watching ask are actually more interesting than the ones I'm in. So I'll just say to anybody watching, as we go tonight, if you've got any questions for Arjuna, please just pop them in the box, and I'll keep an eye on them, and we'll hopefully get round to them.
Yeah.
So welcome. Have you done a podcast with anyone before where you talk about music?
Never. This is the first one.
Oh, excellent. Yeah. I just thought we'd do something a little bit different. I can't remember who it was. Somebody suggested it's a little bit like a modern day Desert Island Discs. Are you old enough to remember that?
I've never heard it, but I know what it is.
Yeah, indeed. So I've got a load of questions for you, but we're here predominantly. Do you know what JFDI means?
I don't know.
So this is called the JFDI podcast because I kind of have this bit of an ethos. I mean, I kind of spent too long in life procrastinating. I'm a big procrastinator. Well, not as much as I was until I started to apply my JFDI, which is, if it's going to benefit my life, stop worrying about what might happen and just fucking do it.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So that's the JFDI podcast, and there we go. So the musical theme is just because I'm fascinated with music. I'm fascinated with the people that I invite along. So you've given me 4 songs, and I want to get straight into them because the first one, I listened to them all this evening, and the first one really got me going. So your first choice is Suicidal Tendencies and You Can't Bring Me Down. So what's the story here?
What's the story? I just picked that because it represented my youth heavy metal punk death metal, and I just love Suicidal Tendencies. They're just so upbeat and so sarcastic, and they're just awesome.
So it represents your childhood. So tell us a little bit about your childhood.
Well, spectacularly normal living in New Zealand. We had what we call bush. I think that's a dirty word here, isn't it?
It means quite a few things, I think. The dirty mind will associate it with dirty, right?
I haven't begun on a good foot, have we? Surrounded by forest. There we go. So I would just lose myself in the forest, climbing trees, in the river, and my mum would eventually yell at supper time, yell off the veranda, and I made my way home, and it was just wonderful, idyllic, So yeah.
What part of the forest? Whereabouts in New Zealand were you?
A place called Lower Hutt, which is near Wellington, the capital.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. I was competitive swimming, so I hit the early morning rises on the head pretty early on. So I did a ton of swimming.
You did a lot of swimming.
Mm-hmm. Twice a day, 6 days a week.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And did that lead to like competition or?
Oh yeah. I was aiming for the Olympics, but got injured before I got there. So.
Crikey. So what sort of age was this around?
It was from 12 to 18.
Right. Okay. So a lot of swimming.
A lot of swimming. A lot of chlorine.
So other than targeting the Olympics, then what did you want to do when you were a kid? As for a job?
I had no idea. I had no idea beyond swimming, really. I was, I was 17, 18. You still don't really have a clue. I was like, I'm just having a blast. I'll go to university and see what happens. I'll keep pushing that job thing back a bit more.
Yeah. And so was it on to university?
Yeah. I studied physical education.
Ah, okay. Physical education.
Yeah.
At university, and then into a job afterwards?
Yeah, well, at university, I discovered kayaking. I discovered the outdoors. They had amazing the canoe club and the mountaineering club and the rock climbing and all the rest of it. They were just incredible. So I got stuck into the outdoors, and after university became an outdoor instructor. So yeah, trained to do that.
Yeah. And you did that for how many years?
Oh. I can't even remember what I had for breakfast. It was a good chunk of time, maybe 6 or 7 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so after 6 or 7 years, so what happened during that 6 or 7 years? Because something changed at the end of that, or towards that. Then I don't want to kind of spoil your songs, or kind of you just need to keep me right with the chronology of kind of how we go along. But 6 or 7 years kayaking. So what changed that desired or required a change?
Well, I was kayaking in the summer and snowboarding in the winter, just having an immense time. And I set my life up really well. Like I was just chasing the seasons. If I wasn't in New Zealand, I was overseas and traveling and just having a ball. I remember my last season snowboarding, and I got this job, and it was so cool. All I had to do was drive a bus up the ski field, park it, let everybody off, and then drive them back down at the end of the day. So I basically was snowboarding every day that season, unless the weather was crap, and then I just read Lord of the Rings. But I came to a point where I was just very confused, because I had this incredible house on the lakefront with mountains on 3 sides, incredible friends. I was getting paid more money than I knew what to do with for doing nothing. I had a free lift pass. I was, in the summer I could kayak and everything was just exactly as I wanted it to.
Yeah.
And yet none of it added up to what I thought it would. I wasn't content. I was lost. I was empty. There was something else, something missing, and I didn't know what it was.
Okay.
And it was a confusing place to be in, because my life, my culture, what I'd learned was like, okay, create your life, get the job, get the people, get the house, get the stuff, the external circumstances, and that will make you happy.
Yeah.
And I was the opposite of happy. So it was a confusing time.
So it sounds as if you've done what many people actually kind of only strive for in later life, which is to actually find something that allows you to follow your passion. That age-old saying of is, make your work your passion and you'll never work another day in your life. But it sounds like you kind of, in theory, already had all of that.
Yeah.
And yet it still wasn't enough, or it kind of, you're after more.
Yeah, exactly. Hence, sorry to do this. Hence the title of my new book. Chasing more and finding enough.
funny that, eh?
But it was true. You say if you make your work your passion, you'll never work another day in your life, and that's what I wanted, because early on, close people, friends, and people I'd see in the street just started dying. I was living in a mountain town, and people into all kinds of risky sports, and they started just leaving early. And some of them were through the stuff that I love to do, and some of them, got hit by a car. One friend got hit by a car on his bike. So it's just some random accident. Another workmate got cancer. He got cancer at the age of 23. He took off work early, and he was dead within 6 days. It was like insane. And so this was really kind of just smacking me in the face a little bit and going, life is short. What do you really want to do with it? And hence chasing exactly what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
But I found I could make work out of anything. It didn't matter what I was doing. It mattered what was happening between my ears. And that's really what started sort of a more internal search, because you think that, well, everything's set up. What have you got to complain about? And yet I wasn't complaining, but I was just lost and, utterly confused as to why life seemed to be such hard work.
Unbelievable. So what was the first step to from being lost to kind of finding what you were looking for, given that you didn't really know what you were looking for? How did you start?
It was a combination of yoga and LSD.
That sounds a fascinating combination, actually.
So, at different times, sometimes in combination.
LSD yoga.
Yeah. But it was just a real search to find a way to really live. And I knew yoga was good for me because it de-stressed and made me present.
Yeah.
And really the biggest thing I got out of the psychedelics was just knowing that nothing was the truth. It was all agreed upon. And I could define anything any way I wanted to. Along with this feeling of absolute self-acceptance. It wasn't so much about the light show, the psychedelic light show. It was all about I am so content and I am so happy to be myself. And it was moments like those where I realized how constant the voice of self-criticism and self-evaluation and self-management was. Trying to be something to someone constantly. And occasionally I reached these moments both in the outdoors and yoga and with drugs that I was just like, this is peace. So
That's amazing. There's obviously opinion is split somewhat in society, but particularly when it comes to psychedelics these days. But I'm fascinated that lots of documentaries and stuff on it these days as well, and lots of science. I've kind of watched quite a lot of those things as well.
Yeah.
But so where did you kind of did you take that then? That sort of understanding. What did you do next then?
Well, I felt like the drugs were showing me a view from the top of the mountain that I couldn't maintain.
Okay.
And I wanted to do it. Yeah, I wanted to reach there somehow without having to take an external substance.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah, it's I guess it's one thing to see everything clearly while under the influence of LSD, but you can't be taking LSD in your cornflakes every day, can you?
No.
That doesn't sound like a recipe for 200% life.
Yeah.
Not sustainably anyway. So so where did you go next?
And that was it. It was sustainable. And my outdoor adventures, I would be on such a high for a week, maybe 2 weeks, but then gradually, the whole difference between the niggles of life and just being grateful that you're alive and have a hot shower and a bed to sleep in. When you go through some tough times, it's really nice just to get back and slip into your warm, cozy bed and know that you can close your eyes and nothing's going to get you. And so a combination of those was like, well, how do I maintain this incredible level of self-acceptance, of contentment? And really, I thought it was through yoga, and the more I did yoga, I saw it was all about meditation and being present. The more present I was, the more I saw I needed a practice, really. So I started looking for a meditation practice.
Ah, okay. And where did that take you to start with?
Well, I did all sorts of stuff. I did the yoga meditations, and I did Buddhist ones, and tapes and books and stuff like that. I was pretty disciplined, having a competitive swimming background. So I was, there's a practice called Vipassana where you sit, cross-legged on the floor with a very straight spine. Yeah. And basically you just set your clock for an hour and sit there. There's more to it than that, but it's a very, I guess Vipassana fans will disagree with me on this, but I found it quite a rigid, disciplined practice. And I was probably more grateful for finishing a session and getting up and moving than I was for anything that happened in it.
Right.
So I really was after something easier.
Vipassana, did you say?
Vipassana, yeah. They do these 10-day silent retreats where you just show up and shut up, basically, for 10 days.
It sounds a lot like Zazen, which I stumbled upon via a gentleman called Brad Warner, who wrote a book called Hardcore Zen, amongst other. He wrote one called Shut Up and Sit Down. He's written loads, but he's he talked about Zazen, which very much when I got the explanation, it was like sit down and shut up and find a spot on it, and it's all open eye stuff. It's none of this, there's no sort of like concentrating on the breathing. It's actually sit there cross-legged, lotus position if you can, concentrate on a spot, and that's you for half an hour. And if it hurts, then good. It sounds similar.
Yeah, there's some pretty hardcore techniques out there of just, as you said, sit down, shut up. And it's good for a certain personality, I think, but there's not much in way of a map to find what you're looking for.
Right.
If you're just told you want to get to London, for example, and you're just told get in your car and drive, chances are you could make it, but you might do a lot of detours along the way. It's going to take you a long, long time.
Okay. So the discipline side of things and the structure was important. to you? You needed
Well,
some.
I think what I realized was a degree of gentleness was probably needed more than
Okay.
outright force and discipline, and that essentially what I realize now is a body position has very little to do with your level of awareness or your level of curiosity.
Yeah.
So what I was really looking for was something that was easier, something that was more direct, because
Okay.
I saw the potential, but it wasn't quite it.
Got you. Got you.
I don't know if that makes sense, but it's almost like, especially for like people who with a high drive, we're used to kind of crushing things into submission. If anything's worth doing, it's worth overdoing, and there's a much more of a middle path, a much more of, and I say gentle, but I mean gentle has, for these people and myself included, gentleness has connotations of weakness, but
to some, but
I mean to the great performance, high achievers, ambitious people, it's kind of a dog eat dog world out there sometimes, and it's we're great doers, but what we are is human beings, and I don't want to take away from the world of achievement and doing, but there's an easier way of doing. And the Chinese call it wu wei, the sense of not forcing, of going with the flow. Of when you're cutting firewood, you don't just whack it down the middle, you line it up and hit it so along with the grain, so it just pops open easy.
Yeah.
The great Alan Watts used to say, "Why row when you can sail?" And use the forces of nature for you, and that takes a degree of subtleness and awareness that sometimes gets missed when you're so disciplined and so harsh and wanting to squash the mind or force it into a particular routine.
More letting it flow.
Yeah, and as always, there's a middle path there, right? The Buddha was very clear on that. It's like, not too hard, not too soft. Not too disciplined, not too sleepy.
Yeah, and that lots of that in the Tao.
Exactly.
The Tao Te Ching. Yeah. That fascinates me. I like little passages of that every now and then. It's wonderful.
Scrambles your brain, doesn't it?
It does a little bit. And lots of people have tried to, lots of interpretations of it as well. And as with most things that people interpret, it's open to interpretation, but people take out of it what they will, right? But let's go back to the music, because we'll come back here. We'll come right back here. I'm sure. I know we will. We'll move on to the next song, which is Norah Jones, Sunrise. Which is definitely not suicidal tendencies.
It's not.
Very, very different. What's the background with this one?
Well, I was hearing the song a lot, and I was already an Ishaya monk, and I was living in a meditation center with a bunch of other monks. And it seemed like every time I was cooking dinner or going for a drive, this song would just appear on the radio, right?
Yeah.
And it got to be just a beautiful little airworm, and I was singing, I'd sing the chorus all day long. But it was just an example. One morning the song was on and I got a phone call, and it was from my buddy, and I found he was telling me my ex-girlfriend had just committed suicide. And I was just like, whew, just blown away in terms of, why didn't she ask for help, or why did I miss the signs? All the stuff that happens around when someone dies, and someone takes their life. And I hung up from that phone call, and within 10 seconds, my brother was calling me, and his wife had just given birth to his first child. And it was just this contrast of absolute. My friend was just in despair and like, what the hell's going on? My brother was an absolute joy. Someone was leaving, someone was coming in. It was just this whole 360 spectrum of humanity, this 360 spectrum of life. It was in just within 10 minutes, it was just an incredible moment. And that song was right there in the background of all of it. So,
crikey.
yeah.
But that just what we were talking about a minute ago, that in itself, in one hand, death, suicide, and then on the other, new life coming into the world. It's as heartbreaking as one side of that is, and elation on the other. It's that's that balance right there, isn't it?
Yeah. And it wasn't one of those, it was just hit me in the face. It was just one of those times where a light bulb comes on and you go, this is life, all of it. Yeah.
So you mentioned that you were an Ishaya monk at this point in time. So I'm going to ask you to tell me, just picking up from where we were around, looking for that gentleness that you were kind of seeking within meditation. I'm going to ask you to kind of just sort of pick up there and tell me how the Ishaya monks came about, how you ended up there. But there's a question from one of our viewers, which perhaps segues into it quite nicely, because it just kind of picks up a little bit on the drugs there. It's Gary's asked, were the drugs filling a void that you felt was missing inside?
I think maybe. I think the main thing was experience. I really wanted to experience the edges of reality. And, both in terms of adventure, going new places, working in a team, putting myself at risk, being scared out of my skin. I really wanted to experience all of it. I really wanted to experience what would happen just on the other side of fear, or on what happens when a team of 4, close, small team, really just clicks together and you just all enter flow and go. So it was part of that, really. It was like, oh, what's this thing that is illegal, but many, many cool people seem to be taking. So it was kind of about that. So it wasn't really about filling a void, but I guess sometimes I definitely did use them to try and give me a boost, or as a pick-me-up, or a reminder, or like a reset. And those were probably times where I had I never really had a bad trip, but they weren't as fruitful, because now I know I wasn't going in innocent. I was going in a sort of a bad state, and I was looking for a intoxicant rather than a message.
You were going in to kind of almost forget your mind rather than or lose your mind rather than sort of expand it in any way. Yes, I'm familiar with that difference as well. So I hope that answers your question, Gary. So let's move on to the Ishaya monks. How did that come about?
Well, I was looking for a meditation practice that made sense to me, and I looked around, and there was, I was calling people and visiting meditation centers, and they all seemed a bit wacky. And it's ironic now that I have a funny name. A lot of them had funny names, but I guess it wasn't so much the surface appearance of things, because I've been studying a bit of yoga, and I've been around the block in terms of that for a while, but it was just the feeling underneath. And I met the Ishayas, and I wanted to learn their meditation technique, and there was just something about them. They just seemed more relaxed in their own skin, and just unflappable. Really, they were intriguing people. So yeah, I signed up for the course and loved it. And they said, well, you know, you can go do a longer retreat if you like that. And I said, how long? And they said 6 months. And I said, well, I'm just finishing the snowboard season. Maybe I can go and spend the summer there. And one thing led to another, really.
Yeah.
I walked into the retreat center in Canada where I was, and just blown away. There was the guy there, the main teacher. I knew he had something that I wanted, and I knew he could show me it. And so yeah, I asked him sort of officially to be my teacher, and he said, well, you've got to become a monk. And I went, ooh, what's that? What's that involved?
Yeah.
And he explained it, and I was talking to him. What does it involve? Yeah. Well, really, there's a lot of different traditions, and some of them are very much about the external living. So you take vows of poverty or vows of chastity. The Hare Krishnas, for example, are vegan, and they don't gamble, and they don't have sex for pleasure, only for procreation. No intoxicants for them either.
Yeah.
So there's a bunch of different external kind of restrictions, but the Ishayas and what they explained to me was there's nothing wrong in anything in sex, drugs, or rock and roll. It's really that's our relationship to them. You can hide in a cave away from women and drugs and gambling for your entire life, but still be hooked and addicted to them. You can still have those mind hooks that remain. And so it really much is an inner practice that transforms your relationship with all of life. So it begins with your beliefs and your habits and really where you're putting your attention on.
Yeah.
So I like that. And so they said, look, we're not about casual sex. We're not about one night stands. We're about absolutely find someone, a partner, but make sure it's about something bigger than just 5 minutes on a Saturday night. Find some depth.
Stallion.
Yeah. Find some depth to everything that you do. If you're going to eat, fully eat. If you're going to have sex, fully have sex, but realize that it comes attached to another human body, and make a connection with that human. So, and in terms of the drugs, they said, look, it's just not a good idea because it takes you further away from the inner experience that you actually want. You can get so distracted by the lights and the whistles that you forget the clarity and the purity of just being present. And you can hunt for the experience that is forever changing rather than being aligned with the part of you that never changes. So so everything they said made sense. I was like, okay, that sounds good. And then they said, well, just sign up for a year. If you don't like it, you can quit. And I was like, okay, that sounds good to me.
That doesn't sound like anything that you would imagine of that has the word monk involved in there.
Yeah.
So you signed up for a year, and you loved it.
Yeah.
I'm guessing because. And so how long ago was that?
That was 2003.
Wow.
So 18 years.
18 years ago now.
Yeah.
Crikey.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Wow. 18 years. Okay. So we're about half an hour in. We normally stay and chat on here for about an hour. So we've got so you've been an Ishaya monk for 18 years.
Yeah.
Crikey.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I've got a couple of little questions in here, just little ones, just to kind of break things up. This one obviously based on the song that you mentioned as well. What's your favorite part of the day and why?
My favorite part of the day.
Yeah.
All of it. I mean, I love, they've all got their, I mean, I wake up, my boy, Zachary, he's 1, he wakes me up about 5 o'clock, 5:30,
Yeah.
and I just take him upstairs away from my wife, and we just hang out. I have coffee, he has some milk, and I watch the sunrise, and it's awesome.
Sunrise. There you
Yeah.
go. I was hoping that might be in there. See, right back to Nora Jones.
Yeah. I take my daughter to nursery, and then I close my eyes and meditate, and I join my wife for a bit of brunch, and it's a really good life I've got. But the work that I do, every part of it, and doing things like this is spectacular. So yeah, all of it's good.
Brilliant. Okay, so the next question is where I just ask this question and just shut up for the next half an hour, or maybe not. In as few or as many words as you like, because when I posted that we were doing this a little bit early today, I said we're going to have a chat about how you can live an extra 100% of your life fuller. And I said, for people saying, but I live my life 100% already. I said, that's maybe the point. We're going to talk about how you can live your life 200%. So how do people do that?
It's kind of like a flower. A flower is beautiful on the outside. Like it's colorful, it looks attractive, but it also has a deep perfume and a nectar, an inner nectar. And I think in our world, we're often asked to pick, what do you want to do? Do you want a life of ambition, or do you want an inner satisfaction? And we kind of have to decide. We have to pick one or the other. What I'm saying, what I know is that our relationship with our mind, our emotion, our internal workings, who we truly are, directly affects and ripples out into everything that we can say, do, and achieve. You know this too. You guys listening, when you've met somebody and they're speaking the right words, but there's nothing behind them. There's no substance. There's no presence. It's almost like they're talking to impress, and they're trying to find the right words that will click your buttons. Versus someone who may say very little or a lot, and yet there's something there. There's a presence to them. And this presence, this source, the Alcoholics Anonymous say it beautifully. Give me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change.
Yeah.
So serenity and acceptance is very much an inner virtue, an inner skill. And then the courage to change the things I can, the courage to do and speak and move forward and make bold decisions and go. And then, so there's two worlds, inner and outer, and then they say, but please give me the wisdom to know the difference. And that, if anything, the source of wisdom, you can't Google it. It's a knowing. You know when something's right for you and when it's wrong. You know when you're telling lies, when you're not. You know when you're not speaking, when you're holding something back, and if you swallow it, it's going to burn you up and wake you up at 3 a.m. So yeah, 200% is complete and utter inner peace, wisdom, complete detachment from that voice of criticism and constant evaluation and management.
Yeah. And
then living life completely freely, fully, with integrity, courage, complete enjoyment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that. And if you like what Arjuna said, this book, like I said, I'm halfway through it. And we were speaking a little bit just before we came live tonight, because you run meditation retreats now, don't you? And a lot of the people that will watch this, ex-forces colleagues of mine, and kind of, part and parcel, one of the first things that started me on the path of kind of doing this was about bringing ex-forces, forces, like old colleagues together, people that hadn't seen each other or heard from one another for a while. It was about kind of reuniting them, because we're all at an age where we spent our formative years, going from children really to becoming adults. and spent those years of our life together. And very similarly to what you mentioned about seeing people, like leave this earth, and like friends of yours dying quite young. It's been no different for ourselves, and I decided I'm going to bring people back together. I love doing it. I get a massive buzz out of it, and doing this came about from that as well. I've obviously, I was blessed myself in 2010-11 when I went to India, is when I kind of started finding like meditation and things like that. But from an ex-forces perspective, I guess a couple of questions on that side of things. What would you say is the main challenge with generally with the ex-forces people that come to you for help?
Yeah. It's overcoming the kumbaya factor. the feeling that they're going to turn up and we'll be sitting around a fire pit barefoot, holding hands, singing kumbaya. But the first few courses were like that, and they were all voluntold, not volunteers, and so they sat there, arms crossed, incredibly polite, good, humored, all the rest of that forces are, but definitely on the cynical side of skeptical.
Yeah.
So it was great. I just had to up my game and really learn to speak a different language.
Yeah. And interesting what you say there about voluntold and not volunteered.
Yeah.
Because the reason that I continue to do this, whether we have 25, 30 people watching and then, 200 or 300 views, or we have 2 or 3 people watching, my opinion on this is that if one person watches a conversation that I have with someone and takes something away, that might be someone that wants to change something about their life, but they're not ready to even speak to anybody about it. But watching in itself might help. So on that note as well, there are a lot of people that will fall into that category that might watch this and hear what I'm saying and deny it to themselves and deny it to me on the screen, because they look at their life and they're either I had a guest on here last week who I asked a very similar question about what was the thing that made him want to change his life. And his response was kind of, he believed, that people will only change when the thought of staying the same is more painful than the pain to change itself. So for my sort of ex-forces friends and colleagues, there will be some that maybe think a lot of change requires courage, and people that have joined the forces and that have left will look at their life and perhaps think, I don't have that courage, or it's different for me now, or nobody's going to understand, or in my my view at the time when I went through that, it was, I can't share the stuff that's going around in here with people because they'll run a mile.
Yeah.
So what's your advice for anybody in a situation like that?
Just to make inquiries. You don't have to jump in the deep end, but there's definitely a different way of living. There's a way of coming to terms with the past, coming to terms with the way that you think about the past, and creating a new way. Our brains are really like software. We can update them, and there's different experts, different methods, different ways, and you'll find some that you just think are ridiculous and other ways that you just slip into. But it does require at some stage you being, that's the problem, being vulnerable enough to say, hey, look, I'm looking for something. I need something else. I haven't got my shit together. Or maybe I do have it, but there's a feeling that there could be more. But it takes a lot of, especially when you're in the armed force. You guys are so used to carrying somebody else's burden. Carrying extra weight because somebody else can't. And if you feel like when you're asking for help, you become that burden, and nobody is going to volunteer for that. That's a tough leap to go, oh, shit, I'm the one that now needs help. And so go easy, but go gently, but keep going.
Yeah. I think that's great advice. There's the analogy of the hole, which people can look. I'm not about to start trying to recount, but I've heard it a few times about, somebody in the forces in a hole and another ex-forces member walks past. It's a big analogy, but essentially what you're saying, go slowly. But for me, that sort of make inquiries that's a much more gentle way of, I think, of putting it than maybe I have to people in the past.
JFDI.
Yeah, I mean, but at the end of the day, as gentle as you like, nobody else is going to do it for you, right?
Yeah.
So you kind of have to, you have to do it, as that whole idea of, well, every day going slowly, as gentle as you like, you're either going to do one or two things. You'll make progress, or you'll make excuses.
Yeah.
And yes, that's one Mr. Mort is very fit, like he loved it, but it's true. It's true, because nobody else is gonna do it for you.
No. And the fact is that we think we are the only ones. Like you said, nobody's going to understand what's going through my head, but the fact is everybody does. Anybody who's really lived, they've had some tough times and had some tough conversations with themselves, and nothing anyone says to me surprises me anymore. It's just like, oh yeah, you too. So we think we're the only ones, but we're not at all. And the more you, sorry.
Yeah, no, go carry on.
I was just going to say, the more you make inquiries, the more you go, the more you actually realize, oh, people aren't going to run a mile. They aren't going to think I'm an idiot or weak or I'm foolish. And you just go, oh, cool. You're enabled to keep going.
Yeah. So I found that I came across a very interesting point. I think it's the beginning of part 2 of your of 200%. And I smiled as soon as I saw it. And as I started to read it, because I left the military, as most people do, because I wanted a little bit more freedom. Freedom to make my own choices. Because in the military, it's very structured. The discipline aspect is there. Although I got okay with the discipline side of things. I wasn't too keen on being told what to do. Got me into a bit of bother to start with. But the discipline and the structure remained. But it was things like being able to work where I wanted, when I wanted, getting to that point where I wanted to have a family, didn't want to be sent away on detachment or posted overseas and not be able to kind of take, my family with me. So those kind of things. And it was about choices. And that's a big part of what you talk about in 200%, about the choices we make and how important they are in getting more out of life as well. So I guess question there is, what choices for you are the most important type of choices to get more out of life?
I think that the first thing that comes to mind is just be responsible. I think it's the very first thing, very first choice I talk about, but take full responsibility for the entirety of your life. There was a stage where I was half responsible for some of it and then sort of blamed everybody else for the rest of it.
Yeah.
And through reading and study and talking to people and seeing that I was just being a victim. I was being a total, I can't do anything because it's her fault. I can't do anything because it's my boss's fault. I'm feeling this way because the government. It was just a total giving away of any kind of power that I had, and there was a bunch of feeling wrapped up in it too. Feeling oppressed, feeling bothered, feeling weak, feeling no weekend. It was an interesting thing when someone said, well, why don't you take responsibility for all of it, even what happens to you?
Yeah.
And I said, well, I'm not to blame. I say you're not, but you can choose how you can be responsible, how you define what happens to you.
Yeah.
And that was a serious light bulb moment, because I was like, ooh, the edge of a cliff kind of, if I jump off this, there's no coming back. This is going to take some major cojones to go, this is all on me. And I'm not going to point the finger at anybody else anymore. I'm not going to complain and whinge and whine about anything, because it's up to me to create something different.
And it's it's that mind shift of, like you say, the victim, like mind shifting from, oh, this is happening to me, all happening to me, to more of an approach of it's all happening for me, and I can, the only things that we have any control over, in reality, I watched something about this the other day. The only things that we've got control over are the things that, like that we can kind of touch, and but even then, it's limited, isn't it? Because the things we have control over are the things that you could define as self, but that's a whole another conversation.
Oh yeah.
But even that, like you say, that mind shift from this happens to me, and just take control, and look at it as if, okay, what can I do, and how can I approach this?
Yeah. I met, just before lockdown happened, this last one, I met like 4 people with a cancer diagnosis within 2 weeks, and they all said to me the same words. They said, I am so glad this happened to me. Talk about in terms of, is this happening to you or for you? This is definitely happening for me. It's woken me up and shown me that I was sleepwalking through life. I was being a victim. I was wasting time. I was, I was compromising. I wasn't rejoicing in what I had. I wasn't grateful for much. And half an hour in a doctor's office, and boom, their whole life had flipped up 180 degrees. And they were like, man, life is precious. I'm going to make the most of each and every moment.
Yeah.
It was like
interesting there, because I've got a question down here. So what would you say differentiates people who settle for ordinary, or like the comparison there, who just kind of walk through life, or daydream through life? What differentiates those people and those that just always constantly strive for more?
Well, I think it depends where they're coming from, but you can continually strive for more and yet never feel like you have anything, and you can feel not only like I haven't done anything, but I myself are not good enough. I haven't got enough, and I'm not enough. It's a really interesting thing. And then you can have these people. Those people are coming from a place of need. I need more because it's going to fill a hole in me. More drugs, like Gary was saying, or more achievement, or more money, or more sex, or more stuff will somehow make me feel more complete. And it never seems to. And then those people who are chasing more on the foundation of, I really want this. I'm excited to do it because I have everything I could possibly need, and I'm excited to have more.
Yeah.
And what I mean by saying I have exactly what I need, it's not so much material. I mean, people often say to me, look, I want more money, then I can be happy, right? And I point out to them that, there's zeros in your bank account, and then there's a feeling of abundance or security or freedom. And the two are not necessarily related. I've been in some incredibly poor homes in the third world with curtains for windows, who have no zeros, but are trying to give me everything that they have. They have all the complete abundance.
Yeah.
And then obviously there's Hollywood stars and billionaires who have a ton of zeros but no security. They're anxious, they're continually trying to prove themselves, they're constantly striving to be something bigger, better, different.
Yeah.
And that foundation of, is it something that you want, you're just passionate about and just so excited, and if you get it, great. If you don't, that, you know, you'll keep trying. Or is it something that you need and you're grabbing for anything that will kind of fill the hole? Yeah. That's a huge difference.
Yeah, very big difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, very big difference indeed. All right, just moving back to what we were talking about, the happening to me or happening for me. I think if I don't watch it, I'll forget about the music entirely. But your next song, actually, it's timely because your next song is by her, or H.E.R. But I think it's her, isn't it?
That's what I say. Yeah.
Yeah, her, and it's "Do to Me."
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, where's the backstory in this, or what's the importance of this in your life?
Well, it doesn't go back as far as punk and heavy metal, but I've always been, always been into reggae and dub, and apparently New Zealand is the biggest consumer of dub or reggae outside of Jamaica. Apparently, I heard that once. But
that's another one on me as well. There we go.
Just growing up in New Zealand, just saturated with New Zealand style Caribbean rhythms, and I just love it. And that song in particular, I heard a couple of years back, and that got hooked in well and good. So I thought that was a nice representation.
And it's a nice song. Again, there's nice rhythm, nice flow to it as well. Well.
Yeah, I was a huge. I haven't cracked open the CDs lately, but Bob Marley, and just used to love listening to him. And yeah.
Oh yes, I've got a few stories about Bob Marley of my own, but this is about you tonight.
Oh, we have to reverse roles for the next one. I'd like to hear those.
I don't think we air those sort of stories. Actually, no, I have no problem with it. I've been asked to do for my songs. We've got it lined up, but only when I've done about a year of this.
Okay.
Or maybe not. So we mentioned film stars a minute ago. I've got a question down here. You were talking about film stars. What's your favorite movie?
My favorite movie of all time. Oh man, there's been some. The Matrix was a classic from way back.
Yes.
Being John Malkovich came out the same year. That was a trippy film. Have you seen that?
Yeah. Yes, it is very trippy. You didn't watch that first time round on LSD, did you?
No.
You don't need to.
No. No.
Well, that's two good films.
And I'm sure there's been plenty, but again, my memory's pretty short.
Well, they're good ones.
Yeah.
And sticking on the celebrity side of things as well, if you could grab a coffee or something stronger, a celebrity, dead or alive, and spend a day with someone, who would it be?
Oh my goodness. Just one, huh?
You can have a couple. Now three if you want.
And if you're including people like Jesus or Buddha, I would grab them in a heartbeat. I would love to know what they were about.
Well, they're celebrities, aren't they?
Yeah.
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 I had a T-shirt. A lot of people gave me into trouble for it. It had Jesus on it, and it said, I think, Jesus. He was doing that, and it said underneath it, Jesus was a rocker.
Uh-huh.
I loved it.
Is that it?
That was it. Yeah, I didn't think there was anything offensive about it, but some people kind of got a little bit upset about it, but
Yeah.
and it certainly wasn't the most offensive T-shirt I have. No, you can absolutely have Jesus and Buddha.
Yeah,
Anybody else?
Well, I definitely have those two. I mean, dude, someone like I don't know, either someone like The Rock.
Yeah, Dwayne Johnson.
Dwayne Johnson.
Yeah.
Or
I'd quite like to see you do a podcast with Dwayne Johnson. That would be cool.
Yeah. People like Jocko Willink and David Goggins, just because they amaze me, man. They're fascinating.
I was listening to David Goggins' audiobook right up until today.
Mm-hmm.
But I had to kind of change the tempo.
Yeah.
And you'll understand this. I had to change the tempo. And so I put on Barack Obama's A Promised Land and started listening. It's one that had been recommended for me. And immediately the tempo changed. But I know he would be, you would need a lot of coffee, I think, to keep up, certainly with David Goggins, Jocko Willink as well. They're all good shouts. They're all good shouts.
I think anyone really who kind of carves their own path in life, I think that's been one of the central questions of my entire life is when do I follow advice and when do I purely go with my gut? And it's trending a lot towards my gut rather than what everybody else might do.
Okay.
And I know today it's easy to bash experts. Everybody's like, get rid of the experts. We'll just democratically agree with what's reality. and you can't do that. But I really love that. That's the big question is sort of the modern day heroes of those people who pick their own path and are just so aligned with their sense of destiny that they just go. So that's why Jesus is on there and why David Goggins is on there. I mean, his Instagram, he doesn't follow anyone. It's like 5 million followers and 0 following.
Yeah.
He just doesn't care.
No, he does not. He does not. So that you going with your gut. Do you get into that in your new book?
I do a little bit, yeah. I talk about sort of, and this has always been why I meditate every day. It's just that level of mental clarity of intuitive wisdom, of being very, very. Because I know when I'm busy in the head, it's almost like it's just muddy water. I can't really see what's doubt and what's fear and what's the correct thing or the bold thing to say or do. And really meditation allows that mud to settle and just things come a lot more simpler, so it's that kind of thing. Yeah.
And so if you could summarize the new book in, again, as many or as few words as you would like.
Yeah. Well, I think it's this idea that, again, of 200% in a way, is that this idea that we, in a spiritual world, that desire is bad, that you can't want anything because that's not acceptance. It's not serenity. And so you get all these wet noodles, wet blankets kind of flopping all over the place in the spiritual world.
Yeah.
Or this kind of over the top ambition, I've got to push and stress is the currency of getting anything done. Like I was saying, the opposite of Wu Wei, the opposite of non-forcing. It's very pushy sometimes in that world. And I really wanted to find a deeper, there's a book by a guy called David Hawkins, and he calls it power versus force. And he distinguishes the difference between pushing and strain and stress kind of force and the power of fluid, intuitive, right action at the right moment, meeting the need of the moment type speech or doing. So I want to find a balance to say, look, if you want more from life, you got to sink deep and find a deeper inner connection, because then you won't stress and struggle and force, and you'll find this clear wisdom, intuition, flow, which is a hot topic these days. Life gets, you do less and you somehow get more from it. And I really wanted to just write a few words sort of selling that.
So here's a question on that as well, because so you've written a book about it, and people can find out more about that. I'm going to bring it back to X-Forces, but not X-Forces is a perfect example, because one of the things, a high percentage of my X-Forces colleagues, when I speak to them about meditation, it's like, and it's not just X-Forces, a lot of people. I think that the common view is that the landscape here is kind of changing. I think people are becoming more open to this. But there are still those that you say the word meditation, or you say words like mindfulness, you talk about being present, and their eyes glaze over and you've lost them. This chat of, seeking something inside is all, a load of bollocks to them. Excuse me. Right. But you know where I'm coming from, because you've heard it. So for those that don't, let's just say don't get that, or don't believe that, that's not for them. What would you, how would you, I don't want to say persuade, because if people aren't ready or people aren't open to it, then they're never going to explore it. But for those that might be, again, in a position where they want to make some change in their life, but they're definitely thinking meditation, oh, that's going to cure all my anxiety and my depression and this, that, and the other. Really? Is it? What would you say to anybody that might be curious, but they're not sold on it?
Well, I mean, if you want to, if they're kind of this way inclined, is check out the science. I mean, there's decades of science just showing the immediate changes in your brain that take and behavior that follow. But really, it's like I heard an old story about a traveler. He's cruising through the forest, and he's hearing this woodcutter, and he gets to the clearing, and it's so obvious the woodcutter is working with a blunt axe. He's smacking this tree with all his might, and it's just not going anywhere. And he walks up to him and says, "Hey, your axe is blunt. Why don't you stop? I'll sharpen it for you. You get your breath back, and you can get going." And the woodcutter says, "Stop? I can't stop. Look, I've got all these trees to cut down by nighttime." And that's the way we do life. We're smacking at it with a blunt axe. We're smacking at it with the skills that we've been given by our parents or our education or our previous career. And quite frankly, they're often blunt, and that's the thing people tell me is like, I don't want to meditate. I don't want to lose my edge. But it's the very thing that it gives you. It's the very thing that makes you calmer, yet sharper, more intuitive, with more energy. But it's a different way of doing things. It is a calmer, more. Here's another analogy. You can be in the washing machine of life and get kicked around and tumbled with the dirty washing, or you can step away from it, just half a step, half a foot. That's the only distance you need, and you can watch it all just unfold from just high and dry and safe and sweet. And we're here's another one. We're all on this roller coaster of life, and it's amazing when it's going great, and it's horrendous when it's going terrible. And for me, meditation sharpens your axe, steps you back from the washing machine, and gets you off the roller coaster. Or you're on the roller coaster but enjoying it, because with every down there's going to be an up, and it just doesn't matter. It's just a game. So that's what I kind of, where I would begin with it, is just realizing that,
yeah, and it's true though. Like what you say there, that like with the ups come the downs in life, and that's for those constantly seeking the highs, as we know, after the highs always comes a low. So kind of striking the balance, and being able to take a step back is important.
Yeah, I would say it's crucial, because it's like almost like nutrition for your mind, body, soul.
Yeah,
For everything.
Indeed.
And you can go a long way on hamburgers and fish and chips, but at the end of the day, when you start doing things that your body really needs, a little goes a long way.
Yeah. So there's a question for you: hamburgers, fish and chips. If you could only eat one food for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Probably a really good burger. One of those. Yeah,
it's interesting. Like nobody has said, has given me an answer that's something extremely healthy.
Well, I am kind of on this low carb kick at the moment, so I ditch the buns and maybe get sweet potato fries or something. But
Indeed. Right, we've got one last song.
Oh yeah,
we've got one last song, which is Villagers, Courage.
Yeah.
So yeah, why did you choose this one?
Well, because it was right in the middle of a period of my life where I was kind of half-assing it. I had a day job, which I could deal with. It wasn't leading anywhere, but it was giving me money, And then I was trying to teach meditation and run courses the rest of the time, and I was getting more and more dissatisfied with the lack of energy that I had to put towards what I really wanted to do, and so I was like, you know what, I'm going to quit my day job, quit that secure certain income, and just dive in and see what happens if I go full-time teaching. And it was terrifying. It was really terrifying just to have no certainty, to have no, what I saw as a guaranteed source of income. But as we know, with COVID now, that's the thing that's shaken so many people's trees, is that, we really have taken any kind of security and certainty. It's been chucked out the window. So yeah, it was like, whew, this is a big jump, and I'm a bit terrified about it. So yeah, I'll just play that song, and it was on the Spotify pretty high rotation as well. It just seemed to pop up at the right time.
Brilliant. And you've actually asked the question that I always ask people as well. As it's the JFDI podcast, I always ask, how do you apply a JFDI approach in life? And you've already just answered it there.
Yeah. But the more I do it, the easier it gets, right?
Yeah. Were there scary moments when you decided, right, okay, I'm kind of going for it? Was there a point where you thought, where you were already committed, and you thought, crikey, this might not work out? Was there at any point in time a thought in your mind to kind of revert back, or had you kind of burnt the boats, as it were? Had you left that, or did you close that door?
I could always go back, but I remember I was just saying goodbye to everybody in the office, and I was walking, these sort of double doors with the glass, and I was just about to put my hand on it, and I just heard, from my left, just this woman's voice going, "He'll be back." And I put my hand on the door and I said, "Fuck you." And that was essentially it. It was like, I don't care what happens. I'm not gonna walk back in there. Gonna prove her wrong.
There you go. Nobody asked the question, but anybody interested if Ishaya monks swear? Well,
yeah, it was definitely a moment of
and you never have gone back.
Never have. Yeah.
So tell me, I could sit, Arjuna, I could sit here and chat to you all night. I
Yeah,
really,
me
really
too.
could. But I'm interested in what comes next. So we know about the first book that you've got. You've got the new book out. So I guess just what's next? You've got obviously a new book that's just out.
There is.
So there we have it. Chasing More. And yeah, so what comes next for you?
Well, I'm going to do the audio book.
Yeah,
I've got a few meditation weekends, a few ascension meditation weekends over the summer, and then I'll crack on with the third one.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And so for anybody interested in finding out a little bit more about Arjuna Ishaya, whereabouts can they get a hold of the books, and how can they find out more about you on social media and stuff like that? Where are you at?
Yeah, well, I try and make my little corner of Facebook and Instagram a little bit more, I don't know, inspiring and fun rather than depressing and draining. So I'm on there, or arjunaishaya.com.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Go and have a look, everybody.
Yeah.
Arjuna, thank you so much for coming along, for sharing your songs, for sharing your journey, for some magnificent insight. I'm going to grab my copy of the second book. I've been in the run up. I've been getting ploughed through this as well. And do you know what you said about a gentleness? What I would say to everybody watching, there's not a page of this book that I have turned and not smiled. Now, so I can't explain that there, but it's just the gentleness, and perhaps your writing style. And you might remember when we first met, I asked a question on Alex's the live meditation that you did. And I think I couldn't really put my finger on it. But I think, and I mentioned about something about a live guided meditation and your voice. There is a calmness and a gentleness. And I guess that comes with much calmness and serenity from inside, right? It must do. And I think that comes through in the book, which is why I smile, because every word that I read, and people have said this to me about my book. They've said, my daughter actually, she said, I could just hear you when I was reading it. I could hear your voice. And I think that's the same. I can hear you talk when I read that. And for me, that's a sign of a great book, because you get a little bit, there's a little bit of you, a lot of you in there.
Yeah.
So I'm going to finish this and get straight on to the next one.
Cool.
So thank you very, very much indeed. I've had an absolute blast. And I know that these guys watching can benefit from your wisdom, and get a smile or two from the books as well. So thank you. If you would like to stay in just for a couple of minutes,
absolutely,
and we'll just say a farewell. So just a couple. We had Paul on tonight. There we go. He said, really interesting chat. That's Mr. Morris for Mr. Fairclough. Definitely worth logging in. Extremely thought-provoking. There we go. Just a few of them. The good lady wife is watching again. Another fabulous chat. Well, it's not me. It's all down to my guest. So, and yes, we'll finish on this one, because I like them as well. Some of the analogies are just fantastic.
cool.
So thank you all very much indeed. Oh, and I was going to finish on that, but there's one more that I think we'll finish on, and then we'll just say goodnight. Thank you all for tuning in. Gary Holmood tonight gets the last word, I think. What else needs to be said? Namaste indeed.
Yeah.
Arjuna Ishaya, thank you very much indeed. JFDI podcast viewers, thank you very much indeed. We'll see you again next week.
Yeah. Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks.